an identity provider, regardless, not Microsoft, but let's use identity provider in general, you get to use, single sign-on functionality whereby you can use one credential, that's one user ID and password, to log into your entire applications, for your organization. So it makes life so easy, way easy for us rather than trying to remember. And if you are even trying to be smart, okay, I'm trying to be smart, I start writing down all, I'm having different passwords for different applications, but I have to write them because, of course, my brain can't carry them. I have to write them. You writing them in a paper too, you've outsmarted yourself because it's wrong. Do you get? So this is this is actually one of the biggest advantage of using an identity manager. It just helps you use this simple credentials to log in through. All right, so that being said, let's continue to what we can find here. So we can see that we have the home, we have favorites, we have identity and all. So this home basically is just, of course, the landing page or what you see first when you log into Microsoft Entra. So it shows you secure access for a connected world, what it can do and all that. And of course, quick accesses to all these features like licenses, subscriptions, and all. So that's what you get. The overview is very important because this has been a problem to so many people, because some people don't even know where their tenant ID is at. As simple as it may sound, it's also very complex. Do you understand? Except people who are really into, like our tech expert brothers and sisters that are already working with M365, that they can quickly tell you, oh, this is where my tenant ID. Some people don't even know what a tenant is. Some people don't even know where their tenant ID is or where to locate it. Okay, so if you are one of those people that you don't even know what a tenant is or where to locate your tenant ID, welcome. So this is where you get your tenant ID for your Microsoft application. So this is for Microsoft 365. Well, what is a tenant? Simply put, tenant is just like your organization, like a house. That's why they call it like tenant, like that space you're occupying in Microsoft infrastructure, right? And because you have a space where your resources are actually kept in, you will definitely have an ID, right? So this is where you get your tenant ID from the Microsoft Entra Admin Center if you're using Microsoft 365, right? This is the simplest way of getting your Entra ID. And just in case you're in a conversation or you're having an interview, or for instance, you're with a Microsoft support, or you're with somebody or a business person and he or she wants to use your ID or your tenant ID or your organization actually, and you don't know. So just to take note, this is where you get your tenant ID. So here you can actually create new tenants. As you can see with the plus sign, it says create new tenants. Sorry, this is for user and groups. Hold on. Hold on. Okay, I know you can actually create a new tenant, but we'll come back to that. So you can create a new tenant in such a way that you wouldn't have to log in and meet what you have here, right? When you create a new tenant, you can log into it and you can manage it. And instead of seeing the same users and groups, you definitely see different users and groups that you will create most definitely for your new tenant. So that new tenant is more like a new space, right? That you're creating for your Microsoft, that you're creating within Microsoft infrastructure. Okay, so let's take note of that. That's actually another interview question. Some people don't know that they could have more than one tenant, within a subscription. So we can take note of that as well. All right, so here, as you can see, we have users, we can create users, we can invite external users, we have groups, enterprise applications that you would like to integrate to M365, and app registrations as well. This is just a place where you can, you can do that. You can actually come here as well to do the same thing. Right, so Microsoft just makes it easy by creating quick links. Instead of you going back to the user pane, you can actually come here to create user. So the question now is, who are these users? The users are the people. It could be a member of your organization, like staff of your organization. It could be somebody in your business, people that don't have a company that runs businesses, right, that are using Microsoft 365. It could be somebody in your business that you want to use, your application, or you want to give that person the Microsoft 365 email box, or you want that person to somehow interact within the Microsoft 365 environment or an Azure environment, for example. So that is a user that you can actually create. So there are two types of users, right? There are the users that are within your company's domain, right? Like you can see, this is our primary domain. We have users that are within this primary domain, right? We have users that can be invited into our organization. Excuse me. So these users that are invited into organizations, we don't want them to have privileges, or we don't want them to have the same rights that our staff or the people that are directly within our organization tenants. We don't want them to have all those rights. We just want them to probably use one of our SaaS application if there is a if there are contractors working with our organization at a particular time. We want them to interact in such a way that they can use just limited resources within our M365 environment or our Azure environment, right? So an identity provider enables you to do that by creating or inviting a user, and that's why we call them guest users. So for us to be able to see that functionality properly, let's just go into the user pane. Okay, so here, just like we saw in our overview, you can actually do what? Create a new user or invite an external user to collaborate with our organization, right? So creating a new user is not something that is totally out of the box. It's just clicking on create a new user and adding the UPN, which is the user principal name. Let's just create one. Let's say Mary Jane, right? Mary.Jane. So the user principal name can be the email address, which is what we are actually creating for our user, right? Then the display name, we can actually give the display name as MJ. So whenever you see MJ, we are talking about Mary Jane, and that's it. So you can see, it auto-generated a password for us, and you can change it. If you don't want it to auto-generate a password, you just put in the kind of password that you would want, right? So let's just go with auto-generated password. Then we can copy the password here. Okay, so I can see the password there. And then we can go ahead to review and create, or we can move to next properties if we want to put in all these, like job title, company name, department. We just want to be explicit with this particular user, because we could need users for sales, users for IT department, users for we could actually separate our users into those kind of departments for something in the future. Maybe we want them to be able to access so and so application within our organization, but we don't want the marketing department to access what the sales department would want to access. So this is where metadata like this or features like this comes in handy. Okay, so we can go ahead and add in all this, but for the purpose of this class, this is just too much. We can just go ahead and review and create, because these are the basics or the most important thing that Microsoft actually needs for you to be able to authenticate into Microsoft 365 or Azure, for example. So we can go ahead and click on create, and MJ has been created. So let's go ahead and look for MJ. So you can see MJ is here, and MJ can actually log in perfectly to our organization. Okay, so that's very easy. We can now go ahead and send MJ's credentials to MJ and say, okay, oh, these are actually your what? Your credentials for our organization. Now, let's say Bio, for example. Bio is one of our contractors, and we need to invite Bio, or we need Bio within our organization. But of course, Bio is not he's not a staff, so he shouldn't have you know, all the rights and privileges that staff of organizations would have. So how do we integrate Bio in as a user? Of course, some persons will say you can always create just click on new user and create him or Bio's credential as a user or like a staff, but that's a very wrong approach. And why it's the wrong approach is because he's not a member of your organization. Maybe he's working with MTN, and you wouldn't want somebody from MTN to have the same rights with somebody that works for your tech or technology organization. It could lead to a lot of complicated issues in the future. So how do we handle issues like that? We can just come in here and go ahead to do what? Invite external user, because this guy Bio is actually an external user. He works with MTN. So when you click on that, the email, of course, you look for Bio's email. Let's say Bio's email is this, right? And his display name will be Bio. Then you can give him a message. Hello, Bio. Hello, Bio. You have been invited to work with our sales department. Just this very simple message. Then you can decide to CC, let's carbon copy a recipient if you want, but that's quite not necessary. So you can just go ahead and review and create, right? So this assignment is just, as you can see, adding Bio to a particular group or adding him to a particular role. The same thing too with the user that we created. So you can decide to say, okay, since we want Bio to work with our sales team, let's just add him to the sales group. Do we have a sales department? Okay, yeah, let's add him to sales and marketing. And you can go ahead and add him to sales and marketing. And you can say, okay, what role should Bio have? Should he be an application administrator? So depending on the context of what Bio is coming to your organization to do, maybe it's just working for just to check billings and all for your organization, or is there an auditor or something, then you can just make him a billing administrator. So once you make Bio a billing administrator, he will be restricted to the billing side of things within your M365 tenant. Okay, so this is just an example, not necessarily making him a billing administrator. So we can go ahead and click on invite. So Microsoft is actually sending him an email, about what we have done. That we are actually inviting him to collaborate with our sales team. So how does it look like on Bio's end? Let's go ahead and check. So you can see now, this is exactly how it's going to look like. So from Bio's end, this is the email that he will get from our organization saying that he has been invited to work with us or to collaborate with us. So he can actually click on accept and use this link and log into the company's tenant. But this is actually a training, so there's a lot of limitation. It's actually a sandbox. There's a lot of limitation to this, but generally all he just needs to do is go ahead and click on accept invitation, and it will redirect him to the right portal. And that's how that works. Okay, sorry, my internet is a little bit slow. So let's just progress. That's how you invite a user, an external user, to work or collaborate with the organization, and that's it. So let's move down before we become more explicit about the features we can have under our users and groups, right? As you can see, we have groups. So what are groups now? Groups, they are like objects where you invite or you put in people with common goals or people with similar attributes, right? You want them to work together, you want them to achieve some certain kind of collaboration, together and all of that. In Microsoft 365, which is the environment we are in, there are different kind of groups, right? We have different kind of groups within Microsoft 365. So we have the security group, we have the M365 groups. So because we are actually talking about identity management, would just be restricted to Microsoft 365 groups and of course security groups. And I'll explain what they are. So for security group types, they are just like a container where you put people that you want to give some certain level of permission. They could all be billing administrators within this group. They could all be Teams administrators within this group. They could all be global administrators within this group. So when you want to put in people that share similar security attributes, you go ahead to create what? A security group. Like for instance, we can make this security group Teams administrators. Close the door. Teams administrators. And then we can definitely give a description. We could just say members of Teams management. This is just, of course, just something I'm writing at the top of my head, right? Microsoft Entra roles can be assigned to this group. So you can actually assign them the security role, like for instance, whatever Microsoft Entra roles are, you can assign them those roles, okay? So these people, you can just go ahead and assign the group and it will affect everybody that is in this group, okay? And that's how the security group thing works. So it's just like a container where you put people together with similar security attributes, to achieve a particular goal. So let's go back to Teams. Oh, I forgot what I even called them. Okay, team administrators. Okay, it's supposed to be Teams administrators. Well, I said team administrators. That's still fine. So you can decide to come to member and you can go ahead to add members, right? And that's because this is just this is just an assigned kind of group, an assignment kind of group whereby you assign users. We have what you call the dynamic, the dynamic user kind of group. The dynamic user kind of group works in such a way that you don't even need to assign users into these groups. You just give, a query or an attribute to that group, and it will automatically fish out people that have those attributes that you assigned, into the group. And what happens? It brings them automatically into the group. So we'll definitely create a dynamic group after this, but I just need to explain it so that we can understand, right? So let's say we gave the dynamic group a query to query people that are within sales department. It's going to look for those that have sales in them. Like you remember those attributes when we're creating a user, job title, all those stuff. So that is where putting in those assignments makes a lot of sense or comes in very handy or comes in very useful. Maybe you are a very busy administrator. You do not want to be assigning groups by yourself or assigning people, users to groups. You just want the dynamic groups to do their thing by probing each user based on their attribute and say, okay, is this user in the sales team? Automatically, it will assign that user to the sales dynamic user group. All right, so that's how it works. However, this is not a dynamic user group. This is just a normal group. And you can go ahead to assign members by adding them yourself. So we can just go ahead and, pick some users. Let's just see these two guys here. We can just go ahead and pick them, and it's as simple as that. That's one, beautiful thing Microsoft 365 is, or that's one beautiful attribute that it has. It's just so simple. Anybody can learn. You definitely would know what you're doing when you look at the interface, because it's easy. You can just see that this says add member. Okay, I click on it and I'm adding a member, right? It's as easy as that. So